So here are all the books that I read during one of the busiest weeks at work. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm doing a little wrap up of all the books that I have read during one of the busiest weeks at work. Usually at work, I'm very busy towards the end of the quarter simply because that's when all the reports are due. That's when all the deadlines tend to line up. And it's usually the days where I stay up until midnight still working on these reports. They're super not fun, but the work needs to be done. And usually I have an audiobook accompanying me during those really late night sessions. And for this round of quarterly reports, I decided to go with historical romance, and I know you guys love historical romance, so let's get started with reviewing some of the historical romances that I have read recently and which ones that you need to pick up very soon. So the first book that I do want to talk about is this one from Vivian Loret. This one is called The Rogue to Ruin, and it's book number 3 in Misadventures in Matchmaking series. This whole series is about 3 sisters who are matchmakers or they're friends, and they have this matchmaking business where they go set out and have people find the love of their lives, or they find a suitable partner, but they themselves are jaded or they're too busy to go find love for themselves. Our heroine is the last heroine in the friend group that have yet to find love, and she doesn't have time for it because she really wants this business to succeed, so she can only focus on her clients. But the one thing that's really bothering her at the moment, it just so happens to be our hero, who actually owns like a business like across the street that is very rowdy, and it's like disturbing her customers and therefore impacting her business. So this book has an enemies to lovers trope where they both bicker back and forth. They both have this like ongoing duel where they just kind of like always blame each other for things. And then of course these two characters end up together and falling in love. So what actually ends up happening is that our heroine has a vile suitor that once pursued her, but then she quickly realized that he was not the one for her and that he is pretty much like scum. And so our hero steps in to protect her by pretending to be her suitor, and this is like a fake dating trope too as well. I thought it was really cute towards like the middle and end. I definitely had a harder time getting into this book. I thought it was way too slow burn. The conversations just kept going, but it felt like it was going nowhere. But I swear towards the middle and the end, that's when it's most worth it. And I overall really did enjoy this series. And I would recommend you to check out Vivian Loret because Vivian Loret has actually become one of my new auto-buy authors simply because of how cute her stories are. Okay, so the next book that I did read was this one from Eva Leigh. This one is called Would I Lie to the Duke? And it's part of her series called the Union of Rakes series. Now, a funny thing about me is that I usually read the series in order. I don't like to pick books out of the series to read because sometimes I find that with historical romances, a lot of other characters get introduced in books and then it just ruins the whole experience for me. I used to was able to kind of like pick books out of random and then just read it from like where I started. But then I started realizing that there were like a lot of things that I was missing out on. So I try not to do that. But for this series, I actually ended up reading book 3 first, and then I read book 2, and then I read book 1. So I believe this one is book number 2. I read book number 3 of this series, and I really enjoyed book number 3. It was my first Eva Leigh novel, and I forgot the title of it, but I'll put a picture up here. And I just remembering it to be very different from all the historical romances that I have read in the past, mostly because it was more sensual, it was a lot steamier, it was a lot unconventional than I would have imagined it to be. Our heroine is going to like the different country to go have an orgy or to be part of an orgy party, and I was like shocked by it. But this one is definitely a little bit more tame. This one involves our heroine who actually runs a business, but her business is failing and she needs an investor. But because she is like a common person, she can't really like, rub shoulders or rub elbows with like the city's like wealthiest ton. So she pretends to be someone that she's not. She pretends that she's like an heiress, that she's like from an upper class, and then she ends up befriending a duke, and they actually become friends to lovers. He's instantly attracted to her. He thinks she's so interesting, the most interesting person in the ballroom, and she has like reciprocating feelings, but majority of the time she actually is thinking about her business first. Now, this one was definitely a lot more slow burn than I would have liked it to be. I thought that Eva really took her time with them building trust with each other, even though for the first half of the book, they already are basically in love and they already stolen kisses and they're already planning their future together. I thought that this book was just falling into that morally gray area that I tend not to like, especially when our characters are lying. I don't like the lying trope because I find that it's very hard for the authors to justify why we should, you know, believe in our heroine again or to really forgive our heroine. And overall, this book, I just gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I still would recommend you to read Eva Leigh because of her books and how unconventional they are with the steam factor. This one was very steamy. So the next book that I read was actually the first book in the series. This one's called My Fake Rake. So when I was reading this one, I actually was checking reviews and I saw that my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers also read this one. She gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And automatically I was like, oh girl, why does she only give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars? Because when I first started reading this book, I really was enjoying the setup and the build-up. Essentially, our two characters are colleagues, but they're friends first, and they are really close with each other in terms of social status. Like, they both are like rich and they are upper class, but they are the same in the sense of like how awkward they are. Our heroine is definitely a very bookish wallflower type of character. Our hero is actually the same. He is very he just focuses a lot on his research. He has no interest in the opposite sex, maybe except for his colleague, which is our heroine. And he only cares about like finding results in his research and things like that. And he loves her because of her brilliant mind. And obviously she loves him because of his brilliant mind. So they're just both nerds and just being nerdy friends with each other. But the thing is that now our hero needs to transform himself. And this is kind of like an ugly duckling retelling where our hero turns from average looking to really good looking, from, you know, proper clothes, a nice haircut, and obviously a nice clean shaven face. And suddenly they both start having feelings for each other, but they don't want to say anything because they have years and years of friendship and they also work with each other a lot, so they don't want to damage that. And I thought that this was really cute, but there is a problem with this book that Lacey also pointed out and that I started seeing too as well, was that our two characters were just too skittish. They were too scared to like really enact on their feelings, so they became very like dancing around the fine line, even though it was very, very obvious to us as readers that they really liked each other. They were just too low self-esteem to realize it themselves, so they ended up having a lot of miscommunication, which can get very frustrating. And if you don't like that, then this rating of this book wouldn't be as high as that I would give it. I gave it personally a 4 out of 5 stars. It's definitely not a perfect book, but it was very enjoyable because I've never read a book where our two characters were just wallflowers and they were just awkward. I just love this book because they were just so awkward and it was so different from others. And it was also pretty hot too as well. Okay, so the next book that I picked up is this new one from Christy Carlisle, and this one's called Duke Gone Rogue, and this one is a love on holiday novel. I think I mentioned this book in one of my like 2022 new releases, and I was really interested in this one because I thought it was a really fun plot line. Basically, our hero was kind of born into this dukedom and he wanted to have fun and he lived a great life, but then responsibility fell on his shoulders where he had to take care of everybody on the land that he owned. He had to take care of his family. He had to make sure that his sisters were, you know, introduced into society, can find a proper suitable husband, and he's like stressed about all this stuff and he overworks himself constantly. His sister gets really afraid for him because he is just too focused on work. So she actually ends up suggesting to him that maybe he should go on vacation. So they actually all pack their bags and then they go to this holiday resort on this like separate piece of land. And that's where our hero sees our heroine again, because a couple years prior they actually met in passing and he never forgot about her because she was just so interesting, she was so pretty. And then now they are stuck on this like piece of land together and she is acting as his tour guide, which is like pretty interesting. And she runs a gardening business, so she knows a lot about flowers, and then he's intrigued by it because she's very interested in it. And then they have these like conversations. It's a friends to lovers romance. This one was definitely very slow. It what took its time to build the relationship, and overall it was just a solid read. It was average. It didn't make my heart flutter. It didn't make me want to, read other Christy Carlisle books. So overall, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It's not a bad read, but it's definitely shouldn't be on the top of your TBR. If it is, there are many other books that could be better. I don't know. Okay, so now moving on to a series that I actually started. I was thinking of like reading all 12 books, I think, in the Maiden Lane series by Elizabeth Hoyt. And I saw my friend Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. I think that's her username. I'm so sorry if I forgot it. But I saw other YouTubers actually read this whole series, and there are guides that are on YouTube already, and I was like, I don't know if I should like read the whole series and make a guide, because like that's what I usually do. I like to binge read a whole series, and then I like to do like a whole series review for it and call it a guide. But I'm just going to tell you guys about the first 3 books I have read in the series so far. Let me know if you guys want me to finish the whole series and give you a guide. But Wicked Intentions is book number 1. I've read random books in this series out of order simply because I was introduced to it by the publicist at Forever Romance, and she recommended me to pick like, these weird books outside of the series because those were her favorite. So it wasn't in chronological order. So I never got to read book number 1. So I was very excited to pick up book number 1 called Wicked Intentions, and I bought this series off eBay. So I was very lucky enough to get a lot of these gorgeous step backs, and they're just a work of art. Wicked Intentions basically follows our heroine who has no money. She's destitute, and she runs this like school for like infants and like toddlers who, have no parents anymore, and it's like an orphanage, right? And she needs money to take care of these children because she has that soft spot in her. So she decides to take up on this like not business, but she decides to take up on this partnership with one of London's like greatest rakes. And basically he is on a hunt to go find a savage killer that has been killing a lot of people that he has known or that he has close relations with. The last person that this killer killed was actually his lover or his mistress. And despite him being a very dark and shadowed character, thinking that he doesn't deserve love, he can't love, and that he is not prone to relationships and things like that, and he doesn't care about other people, he sure is showing a lot of emotion for this mistress that he had relationships with for like maybe like 3 years. So throughout the whole time, we kind of see that outer icy layer kind of melt away, and then it shows like that really soft layer that's inside of where he is truly and who he is truly, and which is someone who is loving and someone who is caring and someone who really cares about our heroine. So our heroine and hero work together to go solve this great mystery. And if you guys haven't read Elizabeth Hoyt yet, basically all her books are super steamy. They are basically really like hot chili peppers, how would you ever describe it. She is definitely not afraid to be unconventional when it comes to scenes like those scenes. And this one took on a darker tone than I last remembered. I forgot that Maiden Lane series was a lot darker and it deals with a lot of heavier subjects, and that the settings that they are in are a lot grittier than you would imagine in other historical romances. This one takes place in like, the dark streets of London where crime is being committed, where it's like not glamorous and pretty like scenes like in Bridgerton or in other lighthearted historical romances. So that's definitely the tone. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Our heroine is widowed. She has her own problems to get over. Our hero has his own personal issues to get over, but they both still ended up being very two strong characters. The one thing that didn't make this a 5 out of 5 for me is because I didn't feel that fluffy feeling inside me when I read historical romances that make me want to give it a 5 out of 5, but still a solid start to the series. Okay, so then I read the second book in the series. So the second book in the series is definitely taking on a lighter tone, but mixed with the grittier sides of London too as well. Basically, our heroine is a lady. She is engaged to this Marquis of Mandeville, and then she thinks that this is like the perfect partnership ever. They're going to be living very happily together, and they're going to boost each other's status, and it's just a beautiful business relationship. But the thing is that she's really annoyed with her fiance's brother, because her fiance's brother doesn't really conduct himself well in society, doesn't really have a great reputation. So they kind of have a little bit of a enemies to lovers experience and relationship. Our heroine constantly fights her attraction for him because she knows that she's engaged to his older brother, so it's not right for her to really play into her own fantasies, but he is very alluring and he is very good at seducing her. Our hero is a black sheep hero type of character. He constantly has people saying bad things about him, and he doesn't let that impact him because he no longer cares, but deep down he still does care a lot about these things. And it's really cute when our heroine kind of steps in and defends him for himself, because she can't stand the fact that he thinks so poorly of himself. I thought that this book was really good at first. Like when we first started it, I thought it was really strong. It's definitely like the same setup that I really like. Enemies to lovers, having our characters kind of bicker back and forth. And it was just super cute because I could tell that our hero wasn't a jerk and that he just needed some convincing on the heroine's side so that he could see it for himself. I was also talking to my friend Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings, and Rachel basically said that this was the weakest book in the whole series for her because our heroine turned out to be a major hypocrite by the end of the book. And I can see why Rachel said that, because our heroine definitely turned into someone that she said that she wasn't by the end of the book. And then I also realized that this book didn't really have that much of a plot. It just was just them just making out and having fun. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's not like that bad, but it's like the lowest one so far in my reading. And then the last book that I read was this one called Scandalous Desires, and this is book number 3 in the Maiden Lane series by Elizabeth Hoyt. And I forgot to show you the step back for the other book, but this is the step back for this one. And this one is a reread. I read this one maybe 5 years ago, and this one is about a pirate. So our hero is a pirate king. Our hero and heroine were introduced in the previous 2 books, and we knew that our heroine kind of lost a big piece of herself. She lost her status, she lost her reputation because of our hero, actually. So what happens is that our heroine has a husband, and her husband committed a crime, and she wants him to forgive her husband. Fast forward to the couple years afterwards in this book, her husband has passed away, unfortunately, and now she is a widow, and she has this baby that was kind of left in front of her house, and she loved the baby because she was grieving over the loss of her husband. And turns out that the baby's father is actually our hero, who is a pirate prince who kind of ruined her reputation. And our hero wants to take the baby away from her, but then his enemies are getting really close, and his enemies can sense who the dearest people are to him. So he can't see another innocent die on his hands. So he decides to take her in and the baby in to his kingdom, or his giant mansion or whatever, and then protect her because he is starting to find a weird attraction to her. He can't stop thinking about her, and he can't stop thinking about that one day where he kind of made her lose a piece of herself, which is lose the reputation. So he is a very sweet and genuine character, but he just doesn't see it yet. And I think that's basically all Elizabeth Hoyt heroes so far. It's just a bunch of these dark characters who are grumpy, grouchy, and had really awful passes, and now they think they don't deserve love, and then our heroine's kind of coming in and telling them that they're stupid and that they do deserve love. I thought that this book was really cute, very fluffy, very sweet. There's a lot of intimate moments with these 2 characters because they are working together to raise this child, and then obviously there is this looming sense of danger happening. So overall, this one, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's not a perfect book because there were some scenes where, once again, it was a little bit too slow burn, but still, I really enjoyed it. But anyways, that is it for all the historical romances that I did read this week during the busiest week of my season. I'm very excited that this week is over at work and I can focus on, my regularly scheduled routine of other work, and I don't have to stay up till like 12 a.m. doing these reports. I will be back binge reading more books in the next quarter, I guess. I'll see you guys again in a new video. Bye.